Hey, welcome, everybody. We want to thank you guys for joining us for another Counterpoise episode. This week, I want to give you guys a shout out. My name is Everett Stevenson, one of your co-hosts of the Counterpoise show, joined with my other co-host.
Hi, guys. My name is Malik Foster, co-host for the Counterpoise podcast.
Hey, everybody. Excuse me. I'm Samantha Adams. I am your third co-host, and welcome. So we welcome you to our Counterpoise podcast. We have a great topic for you guys today. But before we get into that topic, I am going to pull up our Black Business of the Week. If I can learn how to type. For some reason, it is not coming up. Hang on, just bear with me 1 second.
And while Sam gets into that real fast, we just wanted to give y'all just a little preview of some of the things that we have coming up. We're looking to make some changes to the show, as well as give you guys a little bit more better production and things. So we want to thank y'all for growing with us, coming with us during these times, and let y'all know that we ended the year all strong and coming into this next year looking to come even stronger. So.
Absolutely.
Right.
So I have our Black Business of the Week up. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's called The Real's Clothing Line. It's based out of Boston. It's a friend of mine's clothing line. It's pretty popular. So a lot of y'all may have seen that little bird floating around. They sell all kinds of clothes. They sell, I'm gonna just scroll down just a little bit so you can see some of the things, and they also have the 15% coupon, which you guys probably saw when I logged in. They got this sweatsuit. They have t-shirts, denim, hoodies, hats, jackets, what do you call them? Jogging pants, things like that. They have all kind of gear. The gear is pretty fly. They also have socks, masks. See, they have denim. There's Chino. He's our unofficial member. He likes to participate sometimes. So the clothes are pretty dope. You guys should check them out. It's Dareals, and it's DAREALES.com. I wanted to make sure I put an emphasis on that because you will spell it wrong. So it's DAREALES.com. And we'll go ahead and we'll bring them back up towards the end of the show, just so you all can catch that again. But make sure you tap in. But this week we are talking about the name of our show for today is called Accountability versus Privilege. And we're talking about that as it relates to the criminal justice system. Because, we've been seeing it for a while, right? But we've been seeing it a lot more recently as it relates to how Black folks are treated versus how white folks are treated when it comes to the criminal justice system. And so we wanted to go ahead and take a deep dive into that, starting off with talking about, the history and attitudes about that as it relates to the criminal justice system. So some of the examples, I'm just gonna breathe over them quickly. And as we discuss it, we may talk about some of these a little bit more in depth, right? But when you talk about Emmett Till, right? Emmett Till was a kid back in the day. He was alleged to have either whistled at a white woman or looked at a white woman or something like that. Either way, back then, it was during Jim Crow, it was the South. He wasn't allowed to do that. He was lynched. His murderers were never, ever brought to justice. The woman, it came out later, years later, that she lied. Nothing ever happened to her. I believe she recently passed away. No justice was ever served for Emmett Till. You have James Byrd, somebody we don't hear about very often, but I think it was back in the 90s. He was lynched. What happened with him? 3 white men tied him up to the tail end of their pickup truck and they dragged him. But justice was served in that incident. That would happen out in Jasper, Texas. 2 of the men received the death penalty. They died within the last, 10 years. And then one of them got life in prison, and he's not eligible for parole until like 2038.
Hey, Sam, real quick, I wanted to just jump in on that Emmett Till thing too, because in addition to being lynched, one of the reasons why that case was so monumental was because Mrs. Till asked that they had an open casket,
Absolutely.
An open casket funeral, so that the world could see how he was beaten and treated at her son, at that time.
Right.
For allegedly, whistling at someone, at a woman in particular. So I just wanted to add that little thing into that.
I think that's an important fact, because
it was pivotal to the civil rights movement as well. That was a pivotal case.
Yeah, I believe they did that to Medgar Evers too. He had an open casket as well. But with Emmett Till, the thing about him, one of the things about how grotesque his face looked after they found his body, it wasn't only because of the way that they had beat him, they also threw him into the river. So there was also a lot of bloat and things like that had taken place as a result. It was very, very devastating to see. But, it's not just about white privilege either, right? It's also, these famous people, they have a lot of privilege too, right? Like you see things that happen back in the day. Remember Lindsay Lohan kept getting in all kind of trouble right along with Paris Hilton. But then they would get like slaps on the wrist, right? But then you had OJ. OJ was like the trial of the century. OJ had the money for the dream team, right? And he got off on murder. But that money privilege did not surpass his blackness, because they definitely came back for OJ later and took him and put him in jail for stealing his
it was a lot of, corruption involved surrounding that trial. And that's another thing that also helped OJ as well. So it's not the fact that he just not only had, his money privilege, right, wealth privilege, but also there was the corruption. It was going to be hard for them to actually find him guilty based off of how they handled the trial prosecution. So I just wanted to add that in there.
Well, I mean, that's a good point, right? Because one of the cops was a racist, Mark Furman. They found audio or something of him dropping the N-word all over the place. Then there was some hanky, funny business going on as it related to the guy who was living in the back house.
Yeah, the other guy, so.
Yeah, and then they were planting evidence and blood evidence. Yeah, Cato Kalin, yeah. And they were planting. Then they said the police planted the evidence and
blood all over. So much corruption, just right. I'm like they really
did not have the funds, like you say. Like a lot of times we know in society, some people don't have those means, so they just get a public defender. They don't have the means to.
They get a little old me, right?
Right. So they may not necessarily have the means to be able to hire individuals to do, investigations and further investigate certain details to see, if it's accurate or if things are being done at the right level.
Right. So. But, one thing you just said that triggered something that was interesting about the OJ case. And you saw it on the People versus OJ flick, and it happened similarly. Sorry, guys, my dog wants something. But it happened similarly. Well, what happened was the glove, right? The glove don't fit, you must have quit situation where they had Rob Shapiro. He was like walking by when they were getting ready to go on a break. He tries on the glove. The glove didn't fit him. So he knew if it didn't fit him, it wouldn't fit OJ, right? But there's also an argument to be made about the fact that because OJ played football for so long, he suffered from arthritis. And so his hands were swollen. So that's, and the glove shrunk. So that's the reason why it didn't fit. There's a whole lot of things that you can draw from that. You know what I mean? But it's just, he was acquitted essentially because he could afford counsel that was good. He had good
counsel.
Yeah, he did. He got his money's worth. Pardon me for just 1 second. You guys want to go ahead and keep moving so I can
after that we have the Central Park Five. And again, this was another group that we saw, which was 5 young men who were in a park at this famous park, Central Park in New York, and they were charged with the murder of a white lady, I believe, that was found in the park. And these were young school-age kids at the time. I believe, like I said, Netflix did a documentary on them, and made big headlines. You had a lot of politicians come out and speak on this. This is right around the time where America was labeling, people were super predators and things of that nature. And so we've seen that these young men were charged for this crime of this murder, and there were no real facts to validate that they were the ones to be the murders. When we looked at some of the evidence that they had, they were showing that, again, corruption within the interrogations of some of the young men, not allowing them to have, either parents or counsel with them, interrogating them for long hours, things of those natures that's normally not the way that most citizens with privilege or with counsel normally are treated when they are in those types of situations. So that was a tragic situation in which we saw, like I said, 5 young men who were later, I believe, vindicated and released from jail. But that's the story of the Central Park 5. We have Trayvon Martin. There was another young man who was in Sanford, Florida, I believe, at the time, and walking in the neighborhood, just going to the store or coming back from the store rather, and was killed by a neighbor in that neighborhood. I believe George Zimmerman was the name of that individual who took the young kid's life, called the 911. 911 directed him not to pursue the young man, and he still pursued him. I guess the tussle happened, and he shot Trayvon in the back, and Trayvon lost his life.
Right, and that was really a travesty. What happened with all of those, especially, I wanted to say something about the Central Park 5. A lot of people, they did a whole Netflix series about the Central Park 5, and a lot of people still can't watch it. I watched it. It's very, very good. It's very, very sad also. But one of the things that I did want to make sure I mentioned, that Donald Trump at the time, he wasn't a politician. He wasn't president. He wasn't running for anything. He was just, doing his Donald Trump thing. Decided that he wanted to take out a full-page ad about calling them super predators and wanting them to be convicted and everything else, only to later find out that they didn't even do it, right? They were then later vindicated, lost years off of their lives, were completely traumatized. Now, they were able to sue, but when you sue a government entity, you're capped at how much money you can get. And no money can really repay you for the years and time that's lost, because time is the one thing that you can spend and can't get back.
And the experiences that they had, being young men, having to now go into, jail for murdering, a woman at that. So,
raping and murdering,
all of those factors are, factors that definitely will make, an individual's time even more harsh.
Right. And the one that was there the longest, right? He went immediately to big boy jail, despite the fact that he was the oldest of the 5, but he was still very young in mind, right? He went straight to big boy jail, and they wasn't playing no games with him. He was there the longest, and he literally just went over to the police station with his friend because he didn't want to leave his friend alone. And so, he lost a lot. And he got a lot of money out of it, but at the same time, he lost a lot. There was a lot of trauma surrounding that, but he was also the one that was confessed to him that, by the real guy who did it, that you don't belong here because I did that. You know what I'm saying? I think that's how it happened. I could be wrong, but it's very sad. But at least they were vindicated. At least they're not still in prison. It's just sad the fact that they even had to serve that time in the first place. And then you have people like Amadou Diallo. He's from Africa. He's living in New York. Something happened when he was going home. He didn't commit any crimes or anything like that. He was at his front door and he was going into his home. I'm not really sure I don't really remember what triggered the police to be called or why they arrived or whatever, but a number of police officers showed up, surrounded him, and as he reached for his wallet to show him that he lived at this particular address, they shot him 40-something times. And he was murdered, and there was never any justice for him. They had a trial. I think there may have been a mistrial, if I'm not mistaken, retried, still nothing. And we just see it time and time again. But the thing about it is it didn't all start, but we all really started like taking big notice of it as it relates to the criminal justice system specifically when it happened with Rodney King, right? Now, for those of y'all who don't know who Rodney King is, I mean, most of y'all, you should, because, that's a name at least you should have at least heard. What happened with Rodney King is Rodney King got pulled over by police. And for whatever reason, they wanted him to get out the car. And this is back in like the early 90s. So this is pre-body cam, dash cam, cell phone, all that stuff. I'm talking a neighbor across the street had a VHS video camera, right? Decided he was going to film what was going on. And shout out to whoever that person is. We never talk about that person, but that person really deserves a lot of credit, right? Because they were witnessing an injustice and they decided to film it. And so these types of things happen all the time and are often not filmed, right?
Yeah. Think about how many of these incidents go unnoticed because they weren't filmed, or how many situations happened that weren't filmed.
And I would go as far as to say there's still times where it happens even when people are wearing film, footage and stuff like that. I know I was speaking with another counselor who mentioned to me that, they seen how there was allegedly footage that they were supposed to have from a body cam, but didn't have all of the footage and could only show the footage that they had recorded from a phone. It was like a weird situation. Like maybe they recorded from the screen, but they didn't still have the original footage. So,
yeah.
It was okay to record why wouldn't you maintain the record? But these are the type of things that happen every day sometimes, and so
right. And I can even speak from experience as a criminal defense attorney. I do indigent defense, right? And as a criminal indigent defense attorney, I couldn't tell you how often I say, okay, we need on our documents, the documents we receive from the state, it'll say, hey, there's video. So then we say, okay, let's get the video. And then the video's gone. It was deleted due to retention. Like, but it was going to court. They honestly could get in trouble for that, but they don't. You know what I'm saying? They don't. And when you're talking about criminal, it's going to go to court at some point, right? If the case isn't done, it's not like it's a civil case. Criminal cases always go to court. Even if they're going there to enter a plea, they always go to court, but you never know until you get there. So the thing about Rodney King, let me finish telling the Rodney King story for the folks that don't know. He had encountered the police. Police had him get out the car, and he was beaten by 4 police officers with billy clubs. They were kicking him, punching him, beating him with their clubs and sticks and everything, and then arrested him. And then they tried to allege he was on PCP and he had this superhuman strength and all this other stuff. But all you see in the video is them whooping his behind. And then they arrested him. And then when they filed charges against those police, the police were vindicated. Despite the fact there was a video, despite the fact the jury actually saw the video, he was still, they were still vindicated, and it caused riots. Those are the LA riots that they talk about, and those riots went on for a while. You know what I mean? And so, in Rodney King's favorite words was, "Can't we all just get along?" You know what I mean? And what happened with Rodney King was sad, but it happens every single day. And you know what we see on social media a lot of times with these incidences of people being harmed simply because they're Black, right? Or being prosecuted simply because they're Black, or not even simply because they're Black. Let's say they even did it, but they're getting these uneven sentences or whatever. All of these things are happening every single day, and we don't hear about most of them. We only hear about a little bit of them, and a lot of times they're, you know, they're filmed, and we make a big stink and all that, but what really happens, right? But we can always contrast that, right? And you guys can jump in whenever, because you know.
No, absolutely. We definitely have some contrast with that, and one of the things that you brought up that was really great was not necessarily, it was good for American history in the sense of for us getting justice, was the fact that this was recorded, and that was one of the things that really has been pivotal, I believe, in the reemergence as we're kind of seeing in some of the justices that we are seeing in today's time. One of the more recent ones that we can talk about was the George Floyd situation, in which we've seen that justice started to be served against individuals who are going over and above in their job as police officers. And so, if for those who may not be familiar with the George Floyd situation, there was a police officer who was making an arrest, and they placed Mr. Floyd on the ground and had his knee on his neck for over 8 minutes, while and to some of his pleas of, you know, please, I can't breathe, that was recorded by some bystanders that was at the event as well, and that was one of the bigger cases of the last century as well.
Kind of reminiscent of Eric Gardner. You got choked out.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what the George Floyd situation reminded me of. But there's so many countless situations. But go ahead.
Oh, well, the reason why I was referencing that, and I thought that it was a great reference segue from what Sam was just saying, was because, you know, Rodney King had a lot of national attention. So did George Floyd. You know, we saw, like you said, protests nationwide. We started to see that people started to kind of
worldwide.
I'm sorry?
Worldwide.
Yeah, worldwide. Yeah, we saw people started to kind of get that awakening in a sense of like, hey, you know, where are we at with this? You know, what's going on, and some of the injustices that's been going on. And since then, and not necessarily that was that, but at that point we saw laws change as well. In Florida, they made protesting laws about individuals who may be trying to prevent you know, blockages of roads and other things. So that was definitely a pivotal time, I felt like, in our nation as well.
Yeah, I wanted to say with the George Floyd situation, like it is a victory. I think the privilege of, you know, a lot of people being able to get away with crimes against Black people is coming down, and the accountability is going up. It's not to where it should be, as opposed to if a Black person was doing these crimes against other individuals or even themselves, they get the harshest of penalties. So I think in the George Floyd situation, it's good that he was found guilty, and he is going to suffer some type of punishment. But of course, I personally would have liked the maximum amount that Minnesota could have gave him, but the judge decided not to. So I guess that's where we're at with that in terms of sentencing. But let's go with the Ahmaud Arbery situation. So that was a situation down here in Georgia where this guy, he's just jogging, and they basically go on, essentially it seemed like a witch hunt from the video, from the footage we saw. You know, they're on the truck and they just hunting him down like he's some game, like he's a deer or something. It was 3 people, a guy and the son, and then I think he was a friend, I guess. So they found guilty on like pretty much everything. all the charges.
The one who did the shooting was found guilty. The one who
he was found guilty of everything.
Everything. The father, he was found guilty on all, I think, except for like 2 or 3 of those 9 charges, and then the other guy, he was found guilty on like 6 of them. But they were found.
But it was definitely a loss for privilege and white supremacists, all that stuff. It definitely was a loss. I'm waiting for the sentencing to see how much time they get. But the way the rules work in Georgia, I mean, that guy who committed the murder, who was found guilty of murder, he's done. The way the rules work in Georgia, like if you're found guilty of murder, that's it.
And it's felony murder on top of that. So, you know.
Yeah, on top of that. So he's done. Like Georgia, the rules, you're done. Yeah, you would know that better than me, but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's like you either get life imprisonment or was it 30 years?
I think it's 20, 25 years.
But when I was looking it up, it was like life imprisonment or maybe 30 years. Basically, it's a long time.
I think it's like 30 years to life. But the thing about it is
the minimum
aggravated assault. I think they all got convicted of aggravated assault. Aggravated assault. So in Georgia, you have 5 charges. They're called 7 charges. They're called the 7 deadly sins. They're aggravated felonies. If you get convicted of an aggravated felony, typically, not always, but typically, because you can get good time in the state of Georgia, typically, you gotta do the whole thing. So, that ain't looking so good for them.
Well, at least I know the way the rules work in Georgia. They're going to be doing some time. And I think even, a lot of people can agree with the type of they'll be serving. Especially if that guy gets life imprisonment. We'll see. You never want to underestimate the type of privilege and accountability, because the accountability is going up and the privilege is going down, but it's not to the point to where we would be satisfied with it.
Absolutely.
So you got anything you want to add on that, E?
No, actually, I thought that one of the things that I wanted to reference too, because when we were talking about accountability, especially within officers, within the George Floyd case, and we wanted to refer to the Gene Botham case that was in Texas. And I know we had that on the board as well with Officer Ann Geiger. And she was held, charged and convicted of that crime, which was a weird situation, because if you guys remember too, there was, which is kind of similar to another case that I think we might reference it in a little bit, but impropriety with the judge and how, I think they referenced her like hugging the judge or something like that, and they haven't reversed and things.
Oh, it was his brother. He asked permission from the judge. Is it okay if I hug her? And
so the judge herself came down off that bench.
The judge came down and did that as well.
And hugged her.
The judge did it too? So I guess. Okay. Because I know the brother asked, can I hug?
Right, which looked weird too from that situation, because that's another conversation. We ain't gonna go too deep into that, but because again, we all understand love our neighbor and peace and God and love and all of that. We all do understand that. But that happened just so fast, right? And to be so forgiving so quickly, I'm not judging nobody on how fast they can forgive nobody, but I'm just saying. Anywho, then the impropriety of the whole situation with the judge coming out.
It just looked so cheesy and
very inappropriate. It was very wild. And even if, because I don't want to say that people can't be forgiving, that's not the setting. That's not to say it shouldn't be done, period, because especially from the judge, because you have to hold yourself to a certain standard, but that's not the setting. But just to get back to the backstory, Gene was at his home eating ice cream. The story was the officer alleged that she believed that she was coming home or into her own home somehow and thought that there was a man that was in there. I think his door was open, but she walked into the house or something like that, seeing Gene, and shot him while he was naked, lounging in his house, eating ice cream in his own home. And an argument is how do you walk into someone else's house and not realize that that's not your home? That's not your decorations. That's not it's not
okay. So let me say
you don't even ask no questions about what's going on.
Right.
You just straight start shooting. You don't see where your surroundings, nothing.
I'm gonna tell y'all I'm gonna tell y'all like this. I live in an apartment, right? And I have definitely parked on the wrong floor, got out of my car, went to go to the apartment directly downstairs from me. And I remember when I did it, first of all, it didn't feel right. Something didn't feel right, right? It felt off. When I got to the apartment, I was like, wait a minute, this ain't my house. When I got to the front door, now I was zoned out in my own mind. That's how I even ended up on the wrong floor in the first place. But when I got to the door, I'm like, my welcome mat's not there. You know what I'm saying? Like the whole thing just didn't feel right. And so I stopped. I looked around and was like, oh, I'm tweaking. I'm on the wrong floor. Got back in my car and went home. So for this cop who is trained, right, to follow her instincts to an extent, you can't possibly tell me that she didn't feel like something was amiss when she showed up. And, that whole story was just, it was sad because here this man is minding his own business in his house, right? And this woman feels like, oh, this is my house, Christopher Columbus. It's not, go home, right? And then when she's convicted, the judge gets down off the daggone, off her, and gave her off her seat and gave her a hug.
Hugging it. The optics, man, was poor. The optics was poor. But that brings up a point which y'all guys are talking about. It's like these suspected white supremacists and white supremacists are very trigger happy. And how do you just like, even if, okay, let's take the racism outside of it. You just don't walk into your house or somebody's house and you just see somebody and your first instinct is, let me kill them. Like every time you encounter a situation, you don't have to murder somebody.
First off, you didn't even know if you were in danger. But your thought process being, oh, I'm at home, so I'm comfortable enough. And that's the thing. A lot of people feel that I'm at home. My home is wherever I'm at, especially here, in certain states where that ground rule is so real. Your king, you can be king castle wherever you stand.
Yeah. This is my castle.
Wherever you stand. So that mindset goes into wherever they're at. Or if it's at a bar, if it's at a line, if it's at, a parking spot, if it's on the job, there's no end to it. And I think that level of privilege is why we're having this conversation today.
Right. Absolutely. And that just leads me into Kyle Rittenhouse, right? That's a recent one. This little boy was given a gun, dropped off at a Black Lives Matter protest in another state and started shooting people and killing people. He shot 3 people, killed 2, right? A Black man, now mind you, people that he killed were white, if I'm not mistaken, but they were supporting Black people, right? So they were end lovers. That's how I feel like that attitude is, right? And so the man who stopped him drop kicked him in the chest to stop him from shooting and killing people. That man was convicted of assault and battery. From stopping somebody from going on a shooting spree during a peaceful protest after 3 people had already been shot.
And my thing is this, Sam, when you finish, I got a point. Go ahead and finish up.
Right. And he was found not guilty. And I feel like that there was a lot of improprieties going on in his trial as well as it related to the judge. So, I think that they have some things that are appealable and they very well may win, just depending on how that Court of Appeals looks at it and how that appellate brief is written. So
also, like within that statement, I just think it's just poor, poor counsel. Like you should be able to make a claim for, defense of others. You should be able to have a defense to that charge. There's no reason, not even no legal advice or nothing like that, but you know what I mean? But the law allows for certain things to happen in certain situations. You know what I mean? That's why we have our jobs. Everything isn't always black and white. So there's times where there's things that can be argued and you know what I'm saying? So like just the fact that he got charged, okay, sure, why he got charged? Maybe because they seen him kick this, white man and okay, woo. You know what I'm saying? Now they don't know nothing about what's going on just yet. maybe a gun on the ground, they heard somebody kick somebody, we're going to get both y'all, woo woo. And then they come to figure out that the situation is, oh, wow, this guy was out here actually shooting people, you know. And again, I think even then, I think when we saw that case, he was giving water when he got brought in or something like that. They showed him like giving him the water bottle, holding it because he was still under. Man, that was not hilarious, but it's not funny.
It was crazy. It was ironic.
But it's it's funny because it's like, these are the images that we see. But you know what I'm saying? The image of us getting locked up or something like that. You on the ground, you getting beat, you know what I mean? It's ugly. So even still, to your point that you made earlier, you can get, you know, held with the same charge, but won't get the same type of treatment.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Exactly. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So I wanted to say, like in this particular case, right, with the Kyle Rittenhouse situation, is he traveled across a different state, bringing his gun to protect property that he doesn't have any ownership.
It doesn't belong to him, exactly.
Like what kind of vigilante Batman stuff is this, right? So basically, what this opens up is so anybody can go and protect property that's not theirs, and go across state lines with a gun, to protect property. I mean, I feel like so now that I mean, you should tell that to protesters when you're protesting. You can do that. You can protect stuff.
Right. But the other part about it is I think that the feds need to get involved, right? Like when you have these kinds of cases, they need to get involved. You cross state lines. So they definitely should be looking at something.
Well,
right.
That's the precedent that they're setting out there, Wisconsin. Like, oh, okay, that it's okay for other people to come across state lines.
And that's perfectly fine if Wisconsin wants to do that. But if the federal government comes in and they file their own charges, then that lets the country know, it's not okay to cross state lines with a gun to go protect property that doesn't belong to you or anybody that you know.
And that is the feds' like jurisdiction, because
right, exactly.
Because there are things happening in Illinois, right in his backyard, like in Chicago, that could use some protection. Rittenhouse. I mean, and people like Rittenhouse who believe that they need to protect so much.
I think he got kicked out of school or his fraternity or something.
Yeah, but he's from Illinois, so he doesn't stay too far from.
I mean, I know the borders are close, but that's not the point. You don't just go. That's like saying, oh, it's cool for somebody from New Jersey to wander off into New York and start shooting people.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. But in his own home state, if there's any protesting or anything going on in Chicago, he doesn't want to start protecting businesses. So that's where everybody's like, that doesn't make any sense. He didn't have any motive. He just randomly there. He just happens to have a gun and he was protecting himself. So I don't know. Like I said, the accountability is still not to the level where it needs to be, and there's still certain privileges there that aren't for everybody.
I think what you were just saying. Oh yeah. To your point that you were just making, I also think that accountability is one of the things that goes towards beyond Kyle, right? Because in contrast to a case that we're about to reference right now, or a situation we're about to reference right now, just recently there was a school shooting as early as this week in Oxford, Michigan, and there was a young man who took a gun to school and killed 4 people now, I believe, at the school. This is a suburban area in Michigan. And recently we saw that the parents have been charged. They were found to be in communication with them. They have knowledge of, I believe, either they're alleging that they had knowledge of him going to school for the shooting or something like that, or had communication with them post the shooting and things of that nature. However, they were being charged for involuntary manslaughter. And I think that that's a nice contrast in comparison to the case with Kyle, where we haven't seen any charges against the mother who, took this young man over here with the AR to go to protest. You feel what I mean? In this other country, or excuse me, in this other state. So that's another situation that I kind of wanted to ring up as like a quick contrast. We did see that this young man got arrested and he was brought in. He wasn't killed on the scene.
Yeah, they're even giving him terrorism charges. Like they're giving him quite severe charges. So
absolutely, and it's
interesting to
also
see.
kicked off a lot of like precautions within schools to take threats and things of that nature, and also charge individuals who making those threats or are found to have made threats like that accountable for those actions. So yeah, it's an interesting development that's been going on, and it's tragic for those who had to lose their life. But yeah, I definitely felt like that was a good contrast in comparison to the Kyle Rittenhouse case, to just see how Michigan handled it as opposed to I don't know if that's Wisconsin, where those charges were.
Yeah, it was Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it was. Yeah.
Well,
We do need to start talking about resolutions, right? Because we can sit here all day and go over every single incident that we can think of where there was some sort of injustice that took place and people got to use their privilege, whether their privilege was white privilege, whether it was famous privilege, whether it was money privilege or whatever, because there's definitely a lot of that, right? And how they were able to get off. Excuse me. Or now what you see is this trend of more accountability, which I think is good, right? So that people can't hide behind that. But, how do we get there? How do we get there so that it's more even-handed? Because when you're talking about justice, right, and the balance of the scales of justice, the goal is to make it even. Everybody doesn't have to be happy with it, but the goal is to make it even. And so some of the resolutions that we talked about, right, were things like, applying pressure. And how do we do that? We've been doing it, right? Back in the day, it was boycotting. Boycotting seems very difficult for our generation. It seems like every time anybody ever talks about boycotting anything, it doesn't go. It doesn't give what it's supposed to give because everybody doesn't do it. Everybody doesn't participate. Like when Martin Luther King had that and Rosa Parks did that whole bus boycotting thing, it worked. They were losing so much money, right? But now what we do is, we protest, we get out in the streets, and we use media and social media specifically because, when you start talking about just the regular news, we've done podcasts on this before, when you talk about who's controlling the media, what narratives are they presenting, because, they'll tell a story like, oh, everything's great out here, and it'll be horrible. Or they'll say, everything's horrible out here, and it's like just two people fighting when you got 300 people over here being peaceful. You know what I'm saying? And so social media is a good tool to use because, we start talking about what's really going on, right? Because you're getting it from the people's perspective and it's not skewed by anybody's agenda. Sometimes it is, but for the most part, if somebody just goes on live, you get to see what's going on and make your own, assumptions, designations, come to your own conclusions about what you actually see, as opposed to somebody telling you what you're seeing. Some of the other things that we can do is pass laws, and passing laws is important. Throughout history, even when you're talking about the Civil Rights Act of 1965, we've talked about this so many times, about how the Civil Rights Act was passed for Black people, but it seems like everybody else has benefited from it. There have been several other laws that have been passed that have been helpful to the Black community, but there have been a lot that haven't been, right? They help everybody but us because it's.
Aren't we still waiting on that George Floyd?
Yeah, and that's where I was going with it. They've been so uneven in the way that they
got a statute before a law.
That they've been uneven in the way that they've executed the application of that law. And so with the Anti-Lynching Law, which is the George Floyd bill, it was originally introduced last administration with Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, and there was another senator, I can't remember his name. It was stalled on the floor by Rand Paul. They've reintroduced it, but it's still sitting there. Like, here we are, going into 2022. George Floyd died 2 years ago. Breonna Taylor, 2 years ago. All these people, and that was another thing I meant to say about the George Floyd situation, Breonna Taylor and all those other people, God rest their souls. The reason why we saw so much protesting and everything happening at that time is because the world was already at a standstill because of COVID. I think that if people were in the hustle and bustle, a lot of the stuff would have gotten swept under the rug with Ahmaud Arbery. People wouldn't hear about it for months. Same thing with Breonna
Yeah,
Taylor.
that's true, because people had all day to protest. And I mean, they couldn't go to work. They were home.
But they also
A lot of
didn't have
people.
anything else to look at either.
Yeah,
Because we
nothing
were
else to
all
look at,
glued
nothing else to do.
I
It was
mean,
either
there were still
protest
TV
or
shows and
COVID.
stuff like that, but at the same time, mind you, stuff
Oh,
were
things were on loop. They already watched all the shows.
Right, and that's what I'm saying, right?
It wasn't like new. I got y'all.
Right, everybody
I don't know what
was
y'all talking about because 90 Day ain't missed nothing. Do you hear me?
everybody was glued to their TV sets to find out what's going on with COVID and when can I go back outside. You know, we were sick of being in the house. At that point, we had been in the house for so long, you know, for months. They told us 2 weeks, and here we are 3-4 months in, like, all right now. Going outside now?
Yeah, they kept increasing it. It went from a couple weeks to 4 weeks, then a month, and then
it was just like indefinite, right?
And Georgia was not like, back. Yeah, we're opening up.
Yeah, exactly.
But after 5 weeks, Georgia was like,
who knows? Yeah, like they said with this Omicron. But anywho,
right. But the laws need to change, right? Some of the laws that need to change are things like ending qualified immunity, right? Because a lot of police hide behind that. And a lot of this stuff that you see happening, it doesn't only happen with police, but you see it happen more often with them because they're able to hide behind that qualified immunity. I like, in contrast, when you talk about the Ahmaud Arbery situation, the father, he used to be a police. And so I believe he felt like he probably could have got away with it because he knew people. Well, looks like that district attorney is also being indicted for her part in not choosing to not prosecute something that was clear murder. You know what I'm saying? Right. And so, you know, people need to just pay attention to what's going on because our society is getting tired of lack of accountability. And I think that it's important to recognize that we have to definitely do something.
I do want to mention about pressure real quick. I think, you know, protesters need to start applying pressure on these legislatures and just, you know, other people, period. Like, right, for example, hey, if they're going to allow other protesters to get killed by other people, right, and say it was self-defense, if they're antagonizing them or inciting them, and they're going to allow that to happen, I think protesters need to come better prepared when you're going to be out there in the streets. That's all I'm going to say on that subject.
Well, Malik, I don't want protesters. I'm sorry, go ahead.
And I think protesters should also apply pressure to their politicians, right? Because that's the main thing that you need to do. And what I mean by better prepared is like you got to be better prepared for anti-protesters, right? Because that seems to be a thing now. Like there's protesters, anti-protesters, because they don't want, you know, those white supremacists and suspected white supremacists don't want to lose their privilege, and they don't want to be held accountable. So by applying that pressure, being better prepared, you can succeed that way, I think. What were you going to say?
I agree with you. I think, you know, when we seen some of the protesters that were in Michigan, and I think that's one of the reasons why, you know, the state of Florida took the stance that they took. You know, the protesters there, not only was it the George Floyd, but when you looked at the protesters in Michigan who came around and they were going around the governor's mansion, or not the mansion, but excuse me, the Capitol, rather, with ARs and, you know, protesting their rights to have guns and things like that nature. And it kind of had like a blowover, but this was a little bit prior to the insurrection type of situation. But those type of situations, you know what I'm saying, is the stuff that I think that they're bringing these type of laws in place in Florida so that they don't see those type of, I guess, protests, if you will, per se, with protesters and anti-protesters in the same.
But they did that. But they did that in California with the Black Panther Party. Remember?
Absolutely. And that's when probably some of the origins of that came, because, you know, again, looks like we want to stop our, you know, your people from necessarily looking like they have those arms. And again, that no one got shot, no one was doing anything. They didn't bust in and, you know, ramage the actual
tear up
capital.
everything. Yeah, steal property.
They didn't do that, and we saw it, to another point too. One of the things that we said for the resolutions, and I wanted to bring this up too, just recently, was that, like, you know, in Charlottesville, we saw that the group that was there, Unite to Rise, I believe is their name. Give me just 1 second as I pull up their article. But that group in particular was one that was held liable for the different charges that they had going on out in Charlottesville, Virginia, to the tune of around $25 million that they said went on in damage for all of the different activities that they had going on, and the damage to the city and the victims that they asked that to be. So those are the type of things that we would like to see the courts do to play their role in helping people to stop with all of these vigilante activities, or, you know, if you are going to be on, you know, some supremacist actions and you causing damage, to be held accountable for it.
Absolutely. So with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and dive into a motivational minute. I have 2 quotes. First one is by Malcolm X. He said, "No one can give you freedom. Nobody can give you equality or justice or anything. If you're a man, you take it." And, you know, that goes by doing things like protesting and making sure you elect the proper people that can exact the proper laws that can, and you also elect the right DAs into office so that they can prosecute these people, right? As opposed to just sweeping everything under the rug. That's why voting is important. That's why, you know, protest is important. That's why applying pressure, like Malik said, is important. And the other quote that I have is by William Penn. It says, "Right is right, even if everyone is against it. And wrong is wrong, even if everyone is for it." And I think that that's important to remember, that when you're talking about justice, you know, everybody doesn't necessarily have to be happy about the outcome, but right is right and wrong is wrong. And we have to do what we can to try to keep those, or make those scales get balanced, because they're not. And that's a motivational minute that I had. So in closing, you know, I just wanted to say, pay attention. Pay attention to what's going on in society. And don't be blinded. There's a lot of people that don't believe that white privilege exists. It does. It's obvious, right? And don't be blinded by the fact that because it exists, that people cannot be held accountable. Because I think the trend that our society is moving in right now is one where accountability is playing a much bigger role. And I think, and I hope that, you know, we will be able to see a little bit more of that. One more thing before I let my co-hosts go into their final thoughts. I wanted to go ahead and highlight the Black business one last time. It's Derails. It's clothing. It's a clothing line. You guys make sure you check them out. Again, they have all kinds of clothing. You know, that sweatsuit right there is fire. I'm just gonna go ahead and put that out there. I mean, they have all kinds. They have t-shirts. Like this one right here is it's tie-dye, but all of them are not tie-dye. That little bird is their logo. So if you see it, you know what it is. Make sure you tap into them. They're for the culture. They have sales. They have all kinds of stuff. And their website is DAREALES.com. Make sure you tap in. All right, so you guys go ahead with your final thoughts.
Yeah, so my final thoughts is just keep it brief and short here. You know, keep applying the pressure, keep being involved in protesting, your local elections, and doing the work that needs to be done to make the changes you want to see. Of course, peacefully protesting, no violence and stuff like that. But you got to do what it takes to get to where you want to be. And I'll leave it there.
Yeah, my closing thoughts on this topic is, you know, again, I would like to continue to see our peers or jurors to continue to apply that pressure when you are given the opportunity to hold accountable the individuals who are causing some of these terrors in this country. I like to ask that that we also apply that same type of energy and pressure and to our, like you said, congressmen and senators that we do have. And I know, and hopefully we can, get some new blood in there. I know Elon just recently said he wanted to see something where no one can run over after 70 or something like that. That you gotta get up out of there. And I think things like that may help bring in a new life and new thought in a sense. But at the same time, I also think that we just need to be ready to be vigilant, to continue to have documentation for things while you're moving, so that you can hopefully have all of the info that you need. And yeah, I just wanted to say that, let everybody also know that you can catch us on Sundays at 1:00, also on Wednesdays at about 8:30. We go live on our Instagram, and then you can catch me at that guy 2104, or you can catch us at Counterpoints Podcast on Instagram and Facebook as well.
Exactly. And quick correction, it's 12:00 ish on Sunday. And 8:30, and for what's a Wednesday, 8:30 on Instagram. Now, if you want to follow me, you can go ahead and follow me at Samantha Adams -ESQ on Facebook right here, or over there on Instagram at Samantha Renee 77_ESQ. Make sure you follow us on all the social media platforms that E just told you about. Tell a friend to tell a friend, like, share, subscribe, and check us out. You can even check out our older podcasts on our YouTube page. So we love y'all and thank y'all. Go ahead, Malik.
Yeah. So thank you, Sam. You can catch me at Malik M. Foster on all social media handles. And like my co-host said, you can catch us every Wednesday at 8:30 and every Sunday around noonish on Facebook Live. And then you can catch the replay on YouTube. It'll be posted to YouTube shortly after this video ends on Facebook. So also, guys, if you guys want us to talk about any particular topic or anything like that, you could just drop us a comment, send us an email, or DM us. So if you guys want to contact us, just contact us at Counterpoints Podcast. We have the Instagram, the Facebook. You can shoot us a message on there, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. And thank you guys for the support that we already have.
The What's Up Wednesday, the old ones, those are on IGTV. You can check those out too.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. IGTV is where we do our What's Up Wednesday episodes. So stay tuned to that. That's always fun, interacting with you guys. So I'll take us home, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Hey.